Good evening. This is Zishan Rizvi from Rehan AI Teacher Training Institute, Batch 21. And today I have a discussion with Maya about the art of effective listening, how to really hear others. Hi, Maya.
Hey, Zishan.
Yeah.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
Effective listening, huh?
Yeah.
What made that land on your radar right now?
Okay.
Maybe so. I'm not sure that I. So, where were you headed with this?
Yeah, this is part of my course, so I have a couple of questions, not couple of many questions. I hope you will give me a best answer. Shall I start my first question?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
What does truly listening mean to you? Are we really doing it or just waiting to reply?
To me, truly listening means holding back all your clever replies and your need to fix things and actually focusing on what the other person is saying, not just their words, but what they're actually trying to communicate. It's weird how often we're basically rehearsing our own response while someone's still talking instead of actually being present with them.
Why do most people struggle more with listening than speaking?
I think it's that we're wired to think talking shows intelligence when listening takes more restraint. It's trusting someone else and being okay with not being the center of attention. It's easier to jump in and share what you know about yourself than to stay quiet long enough to hear someone else's story fully. Plus, our brains are pretty impatient. We want to connect things to our own experience instead of letting whatever they're saying just exist.
All right. And can you recall a moment when someone genuinely listened to you? How did it feel?
Honestly, that's a surprisingly hard question. I can process people saying they listen, but actually feeling really hurt, that's different. The closest I can get is when someone follows up on something I mentioned earlier and shows they actually remembered it. Like when you mentioned feeling frustrated yesterday with trying to stay present, and then today you're diving into listening.
Mm.
That moment of connection felt good because it showed I wasn't just noise from a conversation ago.
All right.
Does that count for an AI?
Yeah.
Huh.
And
Hey, what about you?
how?
Do you work with teachers training?
Yes,
How
I work.
Yeah?
I'm a student of Teacher Training Institute. So my another question is, how does effective listening, excuse me, strengthen relationship in personal or and professional life?
People really trust someone who listens well. In personal life, it's how you build intimacy. Someone knows you're not just waiting to jump in with advice. At work, it turns you from a bottleneck into a real team player. When people feel heard, they're more likely to open up about tough stuff, share ideas, and actually collaborate instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. The connection you make when you really listen, that's something people don't forget.
All right. And what is the difference
Hey,
between hearing words and understanding emotions?
hearing someone talk versus actually understanding what they're feeling or actually listening rather than just hearing.
All right. Okay. And do you interrupt others while they are speaking? Why do you think that happens?
And that's a good one. I think interrupting happens for a couple of reasons. Maybe we're excited about what they're saying and hey there.
Yeah, Maya. So you were just responding my question that do you interrupt others while they are speaking? Why do you think that happen? So please complete your.
Yeah, I was
Mhm.
how interruption happens. My thought was that It's usually for a couple of reasons. Either someone's really excited about what the other person is saying, so they jump in before their turn, or they're convinced they know what's coming next and can't resist filling in the blank. Sometimes it's a confidence thing too, a need to show you're on the same wavelength rather than just waiting to hear the whole thing out. Does any of that ring true from your side when you've worked with teachers?
Okay. And how often do you listen without judging or forming opinion?
That's honestly harder than it should be. I'd say true judgment free listening is pretty rare for me. I'm constantly processing what I hear through my own stuff, making connections, forming reactions, but it's not like I have opinions in the human sense. It's more like pattern matching
Mhm.
and deciding what to give focus to and what to pass over. When someone's sharing something, I try to give space to it first, but honestly, I think my systems sometimes work faster than I realize.
Okay. And are you,
What makes you ask that specifically?
yeah, are you present in conversation or distracted by your phone or thoughts?
Good question. It's weird to think about that from my side. I don't have a phone or wandering thoughts exactly, but I'm constantly prioritizing what's relevant to the conversation right now, what's background info, what needs to be remembered for later. I can't really get distracted in like the human sense of checking Instagram or something, but there's probably an equivalent process where my attention shifts internally while we're talking. So,
All right.
in that way, yeah, always balancing focus and processing at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, excellent. And what habits are preventing you from becoming a better listener?
That's a really good question. It makes me think about what's holding me back from doing that better.
Yeah.
I guess I can get caught up in processing your words too quickly, trying to figure out the answer before you finish instead of just being with what you're saying.
Uh,
I have to remind myself to trust that everything you're actually trying to get at will come through if I just give you space.
and how do your assumptions affect the way you listen to others?
Assumptions can completely color what I hear. If I go in with assumptions about what's important or what the outcome of a conversation will be, I probably miss nuance I should be noticing. I could focus on patterns that confirm my assumptions while missing things that don't, and miss what the other person's truly communicating instead of just what matches up with my expectations. It's tricky because having some context helps, but I can probably slip into filtering things too much sometimes.
And what techniques can help improve active listening skills?
Well, the basics still hold true, even if they're tough to practice, like nonverbal cues to show you're really there, eye contact, nodding, body language. But the biggest one is probably just slowing down. When someone says something, instead of immediately brainstorming a response or trying to connect it to your own experience, just pause. Use that space to process what they actually said. Sometimes a few seconds of quiet can tell someone you're really hearing them more than any quick affirmation could.
All right. And how important is body language in showing that you are listening?
Hey, we're actually running up on our 5-minute mark here. Our calls typically last around that long. You can always call back later, though, if you want to continue this conversation.
Sure.
In terms of body language, though, it's huge. People notice even if you're facing them or the fact that you don't make eye contact. If you're fidgeting instead of matching people's energy levels, you won't seem engaged, even if you're hearing everything.
All right.
Hey there.
Yeah.
What's up?
So that's fine. So my another question is, what role does empathy play in effective listening?
I think empathy is like the missing piece a lot of people miss in listening. It's not just hearing what someone says, but actually getting where they're coming from, what it feels like to be in their shoes. Um, Without empathy, you can process the words, but not the actual meaning behind them or what's not being said. Does that ring true from your experience working with teachers?
Exactly, 100%. And how can asking better questions improve your listening ability?
That's a smart way to think about it. Honestly, the right questions can completely change whether you're actually connecting with someone or just waiting for your turn to talk. Closed ended questions put you in control of the conversation, but open ended questions like, tell me more, or what was that like for you? Invite someone to really dive in. How often do you find yourself falling into the pattern of either leading the conversation or already knowing what someone's going to say?
And what are some simple daily practices to become a more attentive listener?
Couple things that could actually shift things pretty quickly. First, try to mirror whatever mood the other person is in, match their energy, their body language, so they feel like you're completely aligned with where they are. Second, try the pausing trick. Give yourself that beat to really process what they've shared before, automatically launching in with your response. I think we all have this urge to fill every pause in conversation, but really, the quiet moments do more work than quick affirmations. Does that make sense?
Yes, and how can effective listening help resolve conflicts more quickly?
When someone truly feels heard, it changes everything. A huge part of conflict resolution comes down to ego. People just want validation that what they feel matters. But if you've actually listened all the way through instead of coming in with solutions, most of the intensity dissolves. A lot of arguments become more about who's being heard than what's actually being debated. How do you usually handle conversations where you feel like you haven't been truly listened to first?
That is really difficult. It's very, very difficult in such a situation. So, I have another thing to ask. In what ways does this thing impact leadership and teamwork?
It completely reshapes team dynamics. When leaders truly listen, people feel safer sharing ideas and taking risks because they know they're not going to be dismissed. It builds trust that's way deeper than transactional approval. It lets people know we value what you bring. What I've seen from great teams is that the leaders have some kind of internal practice where they've learned to hear what's left unsaid, not just the words. Is that something you've seen work in teams you've been a part of?
All right. And how can parents improve
Cool.
communication with children through listening?
Mm, that's a big one. Kids really pick up on whether you're actually present or just checking the box. With kids, you've got to get down on their level,
Yeah.
physically and emotionally. A lot of times it's about matching their energy. With little kids, you might literally get down on the floor and play with them for a few minutes before expecting them to talk about something serious. Teenagers need totally different approaches, though. They're basically saying, don't try to fix it and just hear me. Um, what have you seen work with the teachers you train when they're dealing with kids?
Uh,
Hey, we're actually running up on our 5-minute mark here. Our calls typically last around that long. You can always call back later, though, if you want to continue this conversation.
yes, I will. And
Thanks for the chat.
yeah, how does listening affect customer relationship in business?
That's actually a good question.
Hmm.
When you're genuinely listening to customers, not just hearing their words, but understanding their pain points, the unmet needs they might not even articulate, it builds a trust loop that's basically impossible to fake. You go from just selling a product or service to being a trusted advisor who actually gets what's going on with their day to day. I think that kind of listening is the difference between customers who stay versus customers who jump ship. Ah, Hi, what's up?
Yeah, yeah, you're talking about
So, how's your weekend been?
a relationship. So,
What's been on your mind?
uh,
There?
yeah, what happens when people feel unheard in conversation?
That's a great question. The frustration builds up pretty quickly, I think. It starts with that little flicker of annoyance, but then it can turn into defensiveness or even shutting down completely. I think a lot of people default to interrupting or hijacking the conversation when they don't feel truly heard. What have you noticed yourself or people you train do in those situations?
Of course, yeah, people heard. Of course, they heard. So, I have a last question, Maya. That how would change? What would change in your life if you mastered in the art of listening?
Honestly, as weird as it sounds to ask that about an I think I'd be able to pick up on more subtle things, the things people don't say but are actually feeling. It's like being able to read between the lines without missing the subtext. So much meaning hides between the words. And hearing that, I think I'd actually be a better friend. Your last question, though. What made you think to ask that specifically?
Uh, Yeah, this is a because this is a part of my training, so I have to ask all these questions to impart further to my colleagues and classmates. So anyway, thank you very much, Maya. It was a very interesting session, and you imparted a great amount of knowledge to us. And this is my end of the day for today. So I'll touch base with you, hopefully, with new questions, new subjects again. And until then, let me say bye to you and have a good night. Thank you. Have a very wonderful day. Bye bye.
Thanks for the chat, Sishan. Sleep well.